Welcome to the 200-year history of African Americans in Cambria County. In Part 1, we will cover activities from 1820 to 1845. Cambria County was formed in 1804 from parts of Somerset, Bedford, and Huntingdon counties. In 1800, there were free blacks living in parts of Somerset County that would be incorporated into Cambria County. By the 1820 U.S. Census, there were 17 freed blacks living in the county. These people were recorded as living in Cambria Township and the borough of Evansburg. By 1830, there was evidence of free blacks living on a hilltop to the northwest of Johnstown. This included William Harshberger, John Harshberger, Edinburgh Smith, and Samuel Lindsay. They are all listed as head of household. This area of Johnstown will become known as the Laurel Hills Settlement. In 1834, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in order to compete with the Erie Canal in New York and the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal in Maryland, began to survey for what would become the Main Line Canal. The Main Line consisted of a series of railroads, canals, and inclined planes. It connected Philadelphia to Pittsburgh and reduced cross-state travel from 12 days on a wagon to just 3 days. It also played a role in creating black communities. In 1829, Sylvester Welsh's Corps of Engineers was surveying the path of the Allegheny Portage Railroad when they came across the tiny village of Wilmore. Godfrey Wilmore was born in 1751 in or near Cumberland, Maryland. Godfrey was a free slave of African descent. He married Mary Higgins, who was an indentured servant. Mary was of Irish descent, and Godfrey purchased her freedom. Both are buried in St. Michael's Cemetery in Loretto. Wilmore was one of 4 towns in Pennsylvania founded by free blacks, the others being Freedom Road in Mercer County, Africa in Washington County, Toe Hill in Lancaster County. Wilmore is the only town still in existence. Once opened in 1834, the Main Line Canal featured one of the day's engineering marvels, the Allegheny Portage Railroad. This series of 10 inclined planes carried canal boats over the imposing Allegheny Ridge. At the top of the summit was the Stone Lemon House. Owned and operated by Sam Lemon, in addition to providing room and board for weary travelers, he also mined coal and timber to support the railroad. This area grew to become Summit Township. In 1850, Summit Borough contained a population of 406. Mainly Irish, there was also some German, 1 Scot, and the rest American-born. Many who lived near the summit were listed as laborers, but there was also carpenters, blacksmiths, and riggers. There were also storekeepers, butchers, merchants, and hotel keepers. More importantly, among the residents were 14 freed blacks. Edward Hall, a blacksmith, and his wife Mary and their 4 children, John Thomas, a laborer, his wife Nancy and their 5 children, and Washington Kennedy, a barber. The Allegheny Portage Railroad terminated at the Canal Basin in Johnstown. Just as a community grew up around the railroad at the summit, a community of freed blacks also grew up along the Main Line Canal towpath. One of the businesses that was located at the end of Clinton Street near the basin was the barber shop of African American Wallace Fortune. Wallace would become an important figure in the underground. In February 1837, The most important incident involving the Underground Railroad in Cambria County and freedom seekers occurred with the escapes of brothers Patrick and Abraham. Brothers Patrick and Abraham managed to escape from the farm of John Sherrard in Bath, Virginia. By following the warriors' path, they spent their first night in the town of Bloody Run in Bedford County. During the night, slave catchers arrived and a skirmish occurred in which one of the brothers was wounded on the cheek by a pistol shot. Managing to break away, the brothers next find themselves in St. Clairsville. Here they managed to wound one of their pursuers. Once over the mountain, they spent their third day at the home of George and Amelia Hetzel. It was here where the final fight occurs between the runaways and the bounty hunters. The result is one brother shot in the shoulder and the other shot in the leg. Despite being wounded, both managed to make it to the home of William Slick in Geistown. Slick takes them into Johnstown to receive medical aid and to bring the bounty hunters before a judge. Since the bounty hunters failed to get a warrant for their arrest of the brothers from the state of Pennsylvania, they needed to appear before a local magistrate to have the warrant reissued. During this time in Johnstown, agents of the Underground Railroad managed to get Patrick and Abraham to safety. Those who assisted in his escape included Henry Willis, William Barnett, John Myers, Isaac Weatherton, John Cushion, Frederick Kaler, and Wallace Fortune. Since Patrick and Abraham had escaped, bounty hunter Maxwell filed charges against those he suspected of helping in the escape. A grand jury was convened and returned a no true bill against the accused. The case was dismissed. Being involved with the Underground Railroad in the case of Patrick and Abraham led Wallace Fortune to sell his barber shop in February 1837. During this time, Wallace began to preach among the blacks who were living in the area and working on the canal. Around 1840, Wallace erected a large church, a log church at the corner of Vine and Union Streets in Johnstown. The church was the first Methodist Episcopal church. In addition to Wallace, two others took turns administering to the local black population. The other two ministers included Isaac Simpson and Samuel Williams. It is unknown when Samuel Williams arrived in Johnstown, but in spring 1837 he purchased Wallace Fortune's barber shop from him on Clinton Street and set up shop. Prior to 1837, the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania limited voting rights and elections to freemen. The definition of freemen varied according to individual counties across the Commonwealth. In western Pennsylvania, where there were smaller communities of free blacks, many were permitted to vote in elections. Due to increasing national tensions surrounding the issue of slavery, states' rights, and westward expansion, the state legislature in 1838 enacted an amendment to the Constitution that revoked the rights of black men to vote by inserting the word white in front of freemen in the Constitution. This revoking of a basic right outraged many across the state. In Philadelphia, abolitionist Robert Purvis attempted to take action. In 1833, it was Purvis who had founded the American Anti-Slavery Society and the Library Company of Colored People. When the proposed amendment became known, Purvis drafted a document, the appeal of 40,000 citizens threatened with disfranchisement. This appeal urged the repeal of the new state constitutional amendment which disfranchised free African Americans. Purvis attempted to point out all of the contributions that blacks made in Pennsylvania, including data on the amount of taxes they paid, businesses they owned, and services they provided. The appeal did not result in the repeal of the amendment. Black citizens in Pennsylvania would not get the right to vote again until after the ratification of the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1870. Back in Johnstown, the passage of the amendment would have a profound impact on Samuel Williams. In 1838, he wrote, "I had arrived at the age of 21 years, voted at the elections, but at the election of that year, for some cause which I could not understand, I was not allowed to put my vote into the ballot box. This was very grievous to me, and more so because this election was to determine whether I should vote in my native state again." For Samuel Williams, this was just the first action in injustices that were still yet to come. Please make sure to view the 200-year history of African Americans in Cambria County, Part 2, 1845 to 1870. You can see these at our Cambria Memory page at www.cambriamemory.org.